check it out in ECM as to whether or not the contact I had on the scope was genuine. Because this was between 65,000 feet and above, and the strength of the signal was as strong as a surface contact on the water of an aircraft carrier. This contact was huge. It was got my attention and the attention of others that were on watch. There were 4 enlisted on watch and 2 officers at the time that this occurred. We challenged it and checked the codes out. It was not commercial, and then it began to move fairly slowly at first, and then very quickly. It was doing better than 1,000 knots. The first time I picked it up, it was hovering, it was stationary. Then it was doing about 1,000 knots. Then we contacted, it was over 500 miles away. And that high up, even though horizon line is at 18 miles on the Earth, when you have that high in altitude, you can detect aerial contacts at a much greater distance than line of sight, or UHF, let's say, communications. And so anyway, in this particular case, it was showing up on height-finding equipment, and it was showing up on radar equipment. The CO came in, and he wanted to know what the heck was going on here, and they looked at it and asked what the hell was that, you know, and it got the attention of the captain at that time. Was Captain Clark, was my captain. My commander was Commander Gibson at the time. And there was only one person on watch in ECM, and before I knew, in a matter of 15 minutes, the ship was being turned, and 2 Phantom IIs were being prepared for launch. Now, I got on a set of headphones, and I'm on a SPAR 8 repeater now, and I'm listening to communications between the pilot and the CO flight ops. And when you go to general quarters, you do the same thing, and I was used to doing this because one of my jobs during general quarters was to sit right next to the commander of our division and to listen to the cap aircraft, and my job was to log in all the tally-hos and everything. My job was as recognition expert also to be able to identify different types of Navy ships, foreign ships, commercial ships, maritime ships, and aircraft. Not only electronically, but visually. Be familiar with electronic fingerprints. In any event, the Phantom IIs went to afterburners, and they were about 100 miles or so away from this contact and turned on their conical scan radar to lock on, and it winked out. Just disappeared. I could see the 2 Phantom IIs on my scope, and this thing winked out. They flew around for about 10 minutes, and then they headed back to the ship. Now understand, this is, normally they spot aircraft on the deck, but they always keep the side ramp. You can launch 3 catapults on the Roosevelt. You can launch 2 forward catapults were, at this time, were occupied with aircraft spotted on the deck, and they launched these Phantom IIs off the angled catapult, and then they recovered them, and after they recovered them, about 35 minutes later, after they landed on the pipe, 35 minutes later, and everybody's settled down, this thing winks back on again, and it's about 12 to 15 miles from the ship, hovering at about 30,000 feet. It's a clear night, stars are out, and the lookouts, I can talk to them on my headphones here. Everybody's connected. Your air plotter, your surface plotter, your officer, your flag plot, the captain or whoever the officer of the watch is up in the conning tower. And on an aircraft carrier, this is very serious business because, you know, it's you have a lot of people involved and a lot of safety factors involved, and so it's not a normal thing just to fire things up that quick. And in any event, they went out, and the lookouts couldn't see anything. Nobody could see anything, but it was there on our radar scope. It was not a false signal. I never saw anything. I never left mine, but all I could hear were the reports coming over my headphones. And then the thing that really startled me the most was that after I got a break, we'd get, you know, they're pretty diligent about this in the Navy even today, is that you'd get breaks, at least a 10-minute break in every hour of watch, because they want to keep you fine-tuned. And so I went down the corridor, and for this time, for the first time, I saw 2 armed Marines there. 2 Marines there, the one that usually stands with the captain, and they're outside ECM, and they wouldn't let me in there, and I had a clearance to be in there. And then I saw other officers there whom I'd never even seen before. So something went down. Something went down. Now, the next morning, a lot of the Airedales were down there talking about, the weird operation that night and what had happened. And of course, I couldn't say anything, and I didn't say anything because I was told by my CO that, and I was reminded of this when I saw the movie Red October. And the admiral walks up and shows somebody the credentials and say, "This never happened." And my CO told me, "Jordan, this, what have you got in your log? This never happened." And I wasn't the only one there on watch that night. So anybody who was there at that time knows what I'm talking about and knows that it's the truth. But less than a dozen people knew what went on that night, and that ship had 5,000 men on it. Then after that particular med cruise, a few of us started talking about it, and I later ran into a Navy chief at the school up in OCS who told me a story about when he was down in the Caribbean, and they had a GQ, and they were on operational readiness inspection with the ships, and they saw this large UFO come up out of the water and take off. And he said that the movie The Abyss was based on that particular story, and that was a part of the Navy records. I've since contacted many of my shipmates because of everything that's been going on with UFOs lately, and which brings up some other subjects, but which I'll get into in a minute. But I have been in touch with Mr. Chet Grzinski, who had been a tremendous help and had sent me some of the papers that I saw when I had first gotten my clearance about reporting UFOs and things like this. It was called GENAP. It was standing orders of the day. If you had detected anything, how to report it. It was primarily for radio operators, so that's Navy intel, okay? And I was flag plotter when the admiral would come on board for 6th Fleet and use it as his flagship, or some other CO in charge of it. And so I don't take, claims about UFOs very lightly, and it makes you kind of nervous when you have these things happen, in your life, and you're a little skittish about talking about it with people because they probably think you're bouncing balloons off the wall or something. But people cannot know what they themselves have yet to experience. But this happened, it was real, and in this case, the contact was not leaving any kind of a heat signature. It was not leaving any kind of a trail. It was not moving at a speed which was proportional to the normal antenna rotation rate, given the contact signal coming back on the vector guide, given the plot, given the minutes I was making the fixes in 30 seconds. This thing was moving 10, 15 miles in 30 seconds, 20 miles, then 30 miles, then 40 miles, then 100 miles. And in virtually 3.5 minutes, this thing moved, almost 500 miles. And then moving from one altitude to another that would cause any normal pilot to black out, let's say, was very strange to me. This was a real contact, and this signal from this contact at that distance and that altitude was sending back a signal as strong as the Roosevelt itself, and the Roosevelt was over 1,000 feet long. It was a lieutenant commander whom I didn't know very well. He hadn't been on board very long, and he came over and he asked, "What was up, Jordan? What do you got in your log?" And he says, "You don't need to put that in there." It's basically the gist of it. And now, to me, that was highly irregular to say that, particularly in ship's logs. I did have the contact logged in